My name is John Horton. Nowadays we live in Tsawwassen, but I was born in England, 1935, born in London, in Fulham actually. At the outbreak of war we moved to Poole in Dorset, which is actually one of the largest natural harbours in the world. And so that's where my basic education was. At the age of 4, I had a very serious road accident, and I ended up in hospital actually for a year. Of course, after that, I became very protected by my parents because they didn't want me to have another accident. Also, when I started going to school at the age of 6, I wasn't allowed to get involved in some of the rougher sports that young children like to get involved in, because they were so afraid that I was going to break my bones again. And so I drifted naturally into music and art. And for a long time, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to make music a career or art a career. Or when I was at school, my desire was to be a naval architect. But I very quickly realized that my mathematical skills were nowhere near to the requirements of the day, and so I drifted into art. I was always painting when I was young. That was really my early inspiration. But also, I had an uncle who I was very close to, my Uncle Jack. He had served in the First and Second World Wars, and I absolutely loved him to bits. And he was a great influence on me. And in fact, it was through him that I actually went into the Royal Navy. Because of that, the influence of living in Poole, which was a big yachting centre, huge yachting centre. Of course, once the war was over, I started to get involved in sailing. I just drifted. I mean, as a youngster, it didn't matter whether it was a river, harbour, or a puddle. I was just naturally attracted to water. It's all about research. Research about, for instance, if you have a specific. Let's take, for instance, all the work that I've done on the Captain Vancouver story. I think that's a good example. Of course, the first thing you have to do is read about the stories. Then you pick out the significant stories, and the next thing is to go to the place where that significant story happened. And for that reason, of course, on our own boat, we've been up and down the coast many times, sometimes sitting for several days in a spot where Captain Vancouver there was a significant story. And then I'm doing sketches. I'm trying to put my mind back 200 years to the day when he was there, and trying to think what he would have seen, because sometimes the coast is exactly the way he saw it. In other places, there are changes. And so you've got to try and take those changes away and try and visualize what it would have been like at the time that Vancouver was here. And the next thing is, now you've got to do all the work on the ships, the boats, the clothing. One commission that I had a few years ago in Menzies Bay. Well, we went to Menzies Bay. I anchored the vessel in the exact spot where Vancouver anchored. I even managed to research the state of the moon, because it was going to be a moonlight painting. I managed to find out the state of the moon on the night that Vancouver was there. So this is the type of stuff that you can now, and I'm sitting there actually on the same day of the year that he was there. So I was able to put the stars in all the right, some of the stars, significant stars and planets in the right position. So, and then when it comes to the ships themselves, I've got drawings of the ships, I've got the lines of the ships, and because of my architectural training, I can take those lines, I can put them into 3D without the use of a computer. And I can put, and I've got books on all the rigging for the day, so I know exactly how the rigging is, because it's very technical accuracy is very important. I go back to the day when first time I had a painting exhibited at the Royal Society of Marine Artists in London, which was a great honour. And I was talking to the then president of the Royal Society, and I said he was looking at my painting, and I said, "So I would love to know," I said, "what is it you're looking for when you jury paintings into this exhibition?" And he was very curt about it. He said, "Properly painted and technically accurate." And I took that immediately as a lesson. When I left school at the age of 16, like I said, I had wanted to be a naval architect. This was denied me owing to my own inability at mathematics. And anyway, I was offered a job in the shop fitting industry. Shop fitting is where they build shops and storefronts, interiors, hotel interiors, and actually even ship interiors. And so I took up my apprenticeship in that. I was trained in the shop fitting industry as a designer. So if I was designing a hotel interior, say it's the bar in a hotel, then I had to do a rendering of it or a pretty picture of it to show the client what it was going to look like, because he couldn't read a blueprint. And I had to go to night school. I went to the Bournemouth School of Art and the Poole School of Art at night, but in the daytime I was doing my apprenticeship in the drawing office, where I learned to be a draftsman. I had to learn that every line I drew had to be a better line than the last. And that's the sort of training I was given. And to be honest with you, during my 6-year apprenticeship, I don't ever remember being told once that you've done a good job. It was always, you could do better. It was always the criticism. And whereas a lot of boys might crumble under that, I didn't. I flourished. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be better. And that's the way I am today. If I'm not, I like to say that every brushstroke is a better brushstroke than the last one. And I'm always trying to improve, find a better way of rendering something. And I think that as long as you try and keep that focus on wanting to be better, you will be better. I have seen a lot of artists over the years where they improve, and they get to a pinnacle, and then it's like they stop. They just go on, same old, doing it in the same way. I'm still experimenting. I'm still experimenting on how to get an effect or how I'm going to achieve what it is I'm trying to achieve. Never sit back and say that's good enough. A painting can always be improved. Doesn't matter how well you think it is. I look at paintings. This painting behind me here, yesterday I started to totally repaint it because I wasn't happy with it. And it's a painting that I did about 2-3 years ago. And I thought, no, you can improve this. You come in with fresh eyes. Sometimes I like to go away from a painting and then come back. And that first few seconds when you look at that painting for the first time, after having not looked at it for a while, if there's something wrong, it's going to hit you. But if you just sometimes you stay there too long. But go away, come back, and it'll pop out at you. Somebody said to me once, you seem to be able to paint water very well, and I don't try always to be terribly literal. There are some artists who they paint almost every facet of the water. I don't try to do that. I try to a little bit impressionistic, a looseness about it. But what I have done in the past is I will get up in the morning when the water's flat calm, and then there'll be a little breeze will come across the water, and you watch how the interplay of light on the water and how the waves form, and then as the wind builds, the wave gets bigger, and you've just got to sit there and observe it and see what happens to light and colour and what have you. I had a very fine teacher. I had gone into the Navy. I did about 11 years naval service, 2 of which was in the active Royal Navy, and then a lot of it was reserve time. But during that time, I also, after I came out of the Navy, I went to work in London at a wonderful company called Frederick Sage and Company. And the chief designer was a gentleman by the name of Vic Barber. And Vic, I guess he must have seen something in me. He was a tremendous artist. And he must have seen something in me because he would spend a lot of time with me, again, doing these renderings of the design that I had just done. And he would come in and he would come and make corrections. He would advise me, And then he actually had done a lot of work for some architectural firms at night as a second job. Anyway, one of these companies offered him a partnership because he said, a lot of our success has been because of your renderings. It turned out that he couldn't do any renderings because he was a partner of the architectural practice. He could no longer do work for some of these other ones. And one of them got in touch with him and said, well, can you advise us? Can you find us somebody that could do this? And he recommended me to this company. And so the result of that was I went for an interview with Vic, and I was given the job. So I left the shop fitting industry and went into architecture. And he stayed with me. He would come round in his lunch hours and help me improve. And sometimes he'd come in, he'd wash out everything I'd done, drop it back in again, and that's how I learned. And it was architecture that brought me to Canada. I came here doing architectural renderings for all the top architects. And I literally did work all over the world. And then I had some time, a little bit of time. There was a bit of a downturn in the architectural world and for a while. And I found I had a little bit of time on my hands. And so I started to paint what I could see out in Vancouver Harbour. And I took them to a gallery one day, and the gallery said, yes, we like these, we'll take them. And I went back to my office, and the phone rang, and it was a gallery. He said, I just sold two of them, have you got any more? And so from that, I started to paint more. And then gradually I sort of wound down my architectural work and wound up my painting, and it sort of went like this a bit for a while because I've got a young family, I've got to keep them, And anyway, and then finally I decided I was making enough money from the art that I could give up the architectural work entirely. Since then, I've been very fortunate. I've had a great following, and I've been able to afford to do nothing but paint.